Hi, and welcome to today's online SpecDD training course. My name is Charles, and I'll be your online instructor today. Today's session is going to be covering the specific job roles of SpecDD. People really are the most important aspect of any methodology. The people are the drivers of the whole process. They're the ones that have to understand the methodology, the principles behind SpecDD, and they're the ones that have to execute it correctly. Now, each of these roles are extremely important in the overall process to make sure the process goes smoothly and as intended, as designed. So the following roles are the major components of SpecDD. We have our product owner, similar to other typical agile methods. We have a project manager, SpecDD coach, QA lead, and our development and QA teams. Some of these overlap and some of these are separate, as you'll see. So, our framework is as follows. Left-hand side, we have, again, the same roles that I just mentioned: the product owner, project manager, QA lead, one individual, a dev team, and a QA team, all consisting of multiple people. For this framework, within each, let's start with the product owner. Product owner is the main driver, is the owner of the product backlog. Okay, this is where everything comes from. That will drive the sprint planning meeting, which in turn drives the development team throughout their daily stand-up meetings, their goals, their workloads, their progress as viewed by the burn-down reports, so on and so forth. The deliverable from the dev team, one of the two major deliverables, goes into the QA team. Passed over, the QA, even before they receive the working software, has already developed their test case library, created these based off of the requirements, again, from the product owner and the stakeholders. The test case library then consists of all the test cases that will be run against the working software. And they'll have their test cycle plannings. The QA team will also have a daily stand-up meeting to cover their cycle goals, their workloads, the quality trends, the testing reports, defects found, so on and so forth. This then combines back to create the improved product, which starts the cycle over again. The QA team, one concept that's in development that is not really displayed here is the concept of QA floaters. Now, a floater is simply a QA engineer, a QA tester, that the team assigns to a development team. So here we see kind of a bridge between the development team and the QA team, connecting the two. The purpose of a QA floater really is to help bring a quality-centric idea, quality-centric thinking to the development team. A development team in your standard agile methodology simply develops. They create the software based off of what they think is from the requirements, what they think is correct, create it, send it off to QA. Bugs? Defects? Nah, QA will take care of that. This thinking, however, really builds up and hinders a product, the cycle, the team, everything. It wastes a lot of time, because if you develop pretty shoddy software, then you send it off to QA, they test it, okay, they found a bug, it's got to come back. The developer, who is probably working on something else already, has to recall what his original line of thinking was, go through the process, go through his code once again, make sure that he understands what it is that the problem was, fix it, make sure that that fix doesn't break anything else, and send it off to QA again. This process can take anywhere from just a few hours to over a span of a few days or even weeks. And it really slows down the team and wastes a lot of time. The QA floater, first and foremost, the QA floater resides within the sprint, within the development team, to help them instantly test certain features or functions right as the developer is writing the code. Okay, that's the most important function of the QA floater. The QA floater may increase the time remaining because for the QA subtasks, these are the items that test the original development task. And if they do find something, then right away it increases the time remaining because the developer has to go back and fix it. However, this time remaining upfront cost isn't really that bad when you think about it in relation to the overall time saved if this bug had gone through developer, finished the sprint, gone off the QA tests it, finds the bug, sends it back to the developer has to remember what his code was, go through it again, fix it, send it off to QA again. Okay? So when you take it in that context, having a QA floater within your agile team really saves a lot of time. It's a really good upfront investment. Now, the QA floater, aside from simply testing the features, also helps overall the team's general idea of thinking. The developer now is forced to develop his code knowing that right away there's going to be somebody taking a look at it, reviewing it, and testing it, making sure that it's quality assurance. This helps the developer better. This helps the developer start thinking with a more quality-centric development ideal. Okay? Why wait until the end? Why wait until the next sprint to figure out quality? Agile promotes speed and change. But there is nothing saying that we can't add quality on top of that speed and on top of that agility. And that's why the QA floaters, simply one or two people within each team, help contribute to creating a better overall team. They also, while during a sprint, can update test cases, which is a side benefit. Doesn't have to necessarily go through a formal QA review process, although the updating and managing of the requirements needs to be reviewed and needs to be paid attention to because that is the second deliverable within SpecDD. However, simply updating minor test cases during a sprint is also another benefit of a QA floater. A lot of teams seem to think that having these additional QA floaters, you have to a lot of time and energy and manpower up front. You know, the QA team might lose a lot of its testers and get stolen, quote unquote, if you will, by the development team. But this really isn't the case. In actuality, in practice, the QA floaters, understanding the QA side of things, really help improve the development team and really help improve the quality of the working software delivered from each sprint. So it really is in the best interest with a small upfront cost, but the long-term benefits and improvements for the Agile team, cost savings, time savings for both the dev team and the QA team are really much, much greater and better in the long run. Okay, so let's dive into the specific job day-to-day responsibilities of each of these roles. So first off, we have the product owner. Now the main purpose of the product owner, their main responsibility is the business value for the project. What is business value? Business value is the value towards those who are paying the bill, the customers, the stakeholders. Okay? The product owner really understands what it is that they want, so he can and he must define in detail the features of the product. Now keep in mind, in SpecDD, sometimes these features cannot be completely defined, cannot be 100% written out, ready to go before the developer even begins. Okay? But that brings back into a separate job role: the developers, delivering the working software, the QA testing it out, being able to figure out those details, and then most importantly, updating the documentation, which the product owner can then review and then further refine the features. The product owner also decides on the release date as well as the content. So he's the one driving the sprint planning, figuring out how long and when and what are they delivering. He prioritizes the features. He or she prioritizes the features according to the market value. And again, the market value really is dependent on, again, those people who pay the bill, the customers. They will adjust the features and the priority every iteration as needed. They will review when a sprint is finished via the sprint review meeting. Make sure to cover all the items that were supposed to be delivered, and if some of them have been changed, to update them. And then for the next sprint, to appropriately plan and kick off. Product owner accepts and rejects the work, accepts or rejects, the work results. So if there are items that he or she feels is not up to the requirement, is not up to the standards, is not what exactly the customer wants, then they can reject it so that the next sprint or a following sprint will need to redo that particular feature. The product owner also works with the QA team. He works with the testers. He works with the end in order to make sure that we meet those quality standards. And as for the product owner's certifications, SpecDD Master certification is highly recommended. Bottom line, the product owner represents the interest of everyone with a stake in the project. Next up, we have the project manager. The product manager's main responsibility is ensuring that the dev team is functional and productive. Now, some of you may wonder if this conflicts with a self-driving team, and the both really work hand in hand. A development team without a project manager is not completely lost. They are not a headless chicken running around. Okay? But with a project manager, with somebody to help them make sure that they are on target, they are productive, they are efficient, is an added benefit. The project manager promotes SpecDD to everyone involved in the project. We highly, highly recommend that a project manager is a SpecDD master. We want to make sure that they understand the principles, the ideas, the methods of SpecDD, and that they can help everybody not only promote SpecDD to everyone in the project, but to help them and lead them to follow the SpecDD rules. The project manager is responsible for the team and the project management, just like their title says. And again, it is recommended that they be a SpecDD master or expert. The development team, obviously essential to any development methodology. SpecDD recommends typically 5 to 9 people per team. Nothing too low, nothing too high. If the company is a little bit smaller, then of course 3 or 4 is acceptable as well. Now the reason it is typically more people, the key is because the dev team doesn't just include the developers and the programmers. In SpecDD, the dev team also includes the UI designers, the interface designers. It includes QA floaters, that I mentioned previously, and any others that are actually working and coding and participating within creating the working software. Now the dev team is self-motivated, and the ideal is to be organized in order to get everything done. They develop the functionality and not just develop the functionality, but they want to develop functionality that will meet the quality standards. The main deliverable, one of the main deliverables, one of two, is simply the working software. At the end of the sprint, they deliver working software to the QA team. The second deliverable is to improve and update the requirement documentation. Okay? So again, the dev team not only needs to deliver the working software, in SpecDD, the dev team needs to update, if any changes have been made, of the requirement documentation. This is vital to the next and all ensuing sprints and development cycles. We really want to keep track of all the documentation so that any changes, we can accept them right away, but any changes that we make, we have to make sure that in the future we've accounted for that and we've documented them. The role of the QA manager, singular, is responsible for the QA testing strategy and execution. They'll lead the QA testers in deciding what exactly this particular cycle should test on. So you can see that they're responsible for the release test plan, as well as the test cycle creation. They work with the dev team very closely for every sprint in order to figure out what exactly the sprint contains, the functions that are going to be developed, so that they can better create the release test plan and the test cases that need to be run for that particular cycle. The QA manager is also highly recommended to be certified as a SpecDD master, not just to promote SpecDD to all the QA members, but also to help make sure that the QA teams follow the SpecDD rules. And then lastly, we have the QA team, the testers. These are typically 2 to 7 people, and they can be a QA team for each dev team. If it's a big enterprise, we've seen one QA team for multiple dev teams. Depends on how efficient the QA team is. We've also seen one QA team for one dev team, a 1-to-1 ratio. The QA team's main responsibility is developing the test cases based directly on the requirements and specs. Okay, we take our test cases creations directly from the original requirements that the product owner and the stakeholders have created. That way we ensure that the quality standard is upheld to the original intent. It's not created based off of the developer's software. It's not created based off of any other documentation. It's based directly off of the original requirements. Now, if the requirements are updated, this is also why it's vital that the developers or the updaters make sure to maintain proper documentation in SpecDD, so that in future iterations of testing, we make sure that we are testing, in fact, the correct thing. The QA team also helps manage the product release test plan. Now again, a QA manager, if a QA team does not have a QA manager, does not mean that they are a completely lost team. They are still able to function, they are still able to drive themselves, and they are still able to properly manage and execute test cycles. They create and execute the test cycles for every sprint and release. So every time a sprint is done and a working software is produced, those go hand in hand, those are always mandatory, then a QA cycle will be executed based off of that sprint working software. And from that working software, it's inevitable that they find defects. So the QA team is responsible for managing those product defects and generating quality reports. Those defects are then pushed back into the product backlog and up to the product owner to determine and prioritize those fixes. Again, now that cycle takes quite a while. could take potentially quite a while. So the QA floaters for SpecDD really help minimize that overall process. So, segue into the QA floaters. These are typically just 1 to 2. We don't need many, just 1 to 2 QA members who actually jump over and join the Agile development team. They are co-located with the developers, meaning that they exist, they are in the same office, they are in the same floor, not necessarily the same cubicle as the developers. Okay? And they really help ensure the quality of that sprint, right then and there in the middle of the sprint. QA floaters can also help write test cases, which then get passed to the QA test team. They also help connect the QA test team with the development team. They work with QA team members to help them better understand what it is that they should be testing and focusing on, and it really helps bridge the gap between the development team and the QA team. Oftentimes in large corporations, there's a big breakdown in communication between development and QA. And so these QA floaters of SpecDD really help connect the two. And as with all other QA team members, QA floaters help to assure the quality of a development sprint. Make sure that we meet those quality standards of the working software that we then deliver to the customer. If you're interested in becoming SpecDD certified, kind of help you in a new job role in SpecDD or to add on to your existing responsibilities. Maybe you already are a product owner, but in order to make sure that you are a product owner with respect to the SpecDD certification, we offer a few tiers of SpecDD training. SpecDD Expert is the shortest one. It simply requires half a day of training. SpecDD Master is a full-on 2 days. It's our complete training course. To become a SpecDD coach, to be able to help others educate and learn SpecDD principles and ideals, we want to make sure that you're a SpecDD Master first, along with some real-world experience, 3 years of practicing, along with a certificate exam. And lastly, the highest level SpecDD trainer, build on top of a SpecDD coach with an additional 2 years of actual coaching, plus a certificate exam and a board review. Board review is, of course, based off of our internal SpecDD board here with Tenzo. All right. So thanks for participating. Hopefully you learned a little bit about the different job roles in SpecDD, and I'll talk to you next time.